Why do you want the job?
Well, Oregonians deserve a Secretary of State who's not only taken on tough fights, but has won them. We're seeing right now, this week in the news, it was reported that the president is willing to spend tens of millions of dollars in lawsuits to fight the expansion of vote by mail. He's coming for Oregon's way of democracy. And I'm the only person in this race who has spent the past 10 years fighting and at the forefront of every major voter expansion in Oregon, from automatic voter registration, national popular vote, prepaid postage. I've been at the front of all of those fights, and nobody else in this race has that track record.
Do you have trouble explaining to people when you're campaigning, I'm running for Secretary of State, and then they say, what is Secretary of State?
That's a great question. My own two brothers. So my brothers live in Eastern Oregon. One is a diesel mechanic for FedEx. The other's a welder for an HVAC company. And we're very, very close. Our parents are deceased, so we're very close. And when I first told my big brothers I was running for Secretary of State, they were like, oh my God, sis, we're so proud of you. I don't know what that means. And
Right.
So we did a podcast for this campaign, Dan, and the very first episode is entitled, I'm embarrassed to ask, but what does the Secretary of State do? And it's a conversation with my two older brothers, one of whom guessed when I asked him to guess. He said, I don't know, the state secretary getting coffee and stuff. And so here's the deal. Oregonians don't need to be embarrassed when they don't know what our leaders do. It is on us as their leaders to make the work we do relevant to their lives. And I have spent my entire legislative career making the work that I do relevant to people's lives. And I will continue to do that as their Secretary of State.
Yeah, nobody knows what Secretary of State does, but 5 people want the gig, so it must be important. Some people view this job as a stepping stone to governor. Do you ultimately want to be governor?
I want to serve Oregon in whatever capacity I can. I've been on a school board. I've been in the Oregon House. I've been in the Oregon Senate, and now I'm running for Secretary of State. Oregon has been a place that I don't know that I could have lived my life anywhere else. I grew up in Eastern Oregon, Duffer in the Dalles. My dad was a single parent. We were homeless as kids. My mom battled meth and heroin addiction. She was homeless in Portland. My life, I don't know if this story would be possible without the opportunity that Oregon has given me. So I am eager to serve Oregon in any capacity that I have the opportunity to do so. And right now I am seeking to be Oregon's Secretary of State to protect our democracy and make sure that the investments that we have in our public services make a difference in the lives of people who need them the most.
I see here that you are in favor of going to a Washington model where you can put your ballot in and it counts the day, if it's postmarked on the day of the election.
Absolutely. This is a necessary change. In fact, I follow all of the national lawsuits that are going on around the country on voting rights. Mark Elias is a very famous attorney who is litigating these cases. Just listening yesterday to a podcast he was on, they won this fight in Wisconsin, even though it was in Wisconsin statute that the ballot had to be received by election day. This is a basic expansion that we should have already made in Oregon that we need to make, especially right now. The post office, people are in concern about the ability of postal carriers to be able to work safely. The mail has slowed in some parts of the state. It's threatened. The funding is threatened by the Trump administration. We need to make sure that if every mailbox is a ballot box, that we treat every mailbox like a ballot box. And if someone gets that ballot in their mailbox, in their ballot box by election day, that should be counted. But we should make it clear to your viewers that is not the case this year. That is not the law in Oregon. So they do have to have their ballots received by 8 p.m. on May 19th.
All 3 of you running on the Democrat side want campaign finance reform, limits on campaign finance contributions. Yes?
Oh, absolutely. Not only want, but I have championed legislation to do so. I'm the only person running who actually passed legislation last year to expose dark money. Because we not only need campaign finance reform to limit the amount of money that is disclosed, but we need all money that's spent in campaigns to be disclosed. Dark money is that money that gets spent by quote unquote nonprofits or other dark money groups that don't have to expose their donors. I'm the only person running who actually sponsored and passed legislation just last year to expose dark money in Oregon elections.
So I just checked the campaign contributions. You have about twice as much money as Mark Hass and 3 times as much money as McLeod Skinner. Then you also, the Oregonians for Ballot Access, the backed by the union, that website. Do you feel that you are maybe talking on both sides of this issue?
Oh, absolutely not. My donations represent many, many thousands of small donations from Oregonians across the state. We have, through the the money that we've received from working organizations, working people organizations, we've received more grassroots donations by far than any candidate in this race. Those contributions represent many thousands of small donations from the folks cleaning our hotel rooms and cleaning our hospital rooms, security guards, nurses, teachers, firefighters, a lot of immigrants that work in laundries. These are the collective action from people that don't have a lot of money that our campaign finance system should be celebrating. What we need to do is get giant corporations and wealthy individuals who can buy a large microphone and drown out all those other voices. We need to limit those donations, but we should not be limiting folks that pool their money with small donations and pitch in to act collectively for the good of all Oregonians.
Are you okay with this Oregonians for Ballot Access website? You got
I didn't develop the website, but I have reviewed it, and everything on it is accurate. It's simply a side-by-side website, from what I can tell, of all the endorsements in the race, including endorsements my opponents received that I didn't receive. Those are also on there. And then a number of organizations acted collectively, so they made up a name for them to act as an umbrella. But those organizations can talk to the strategy and the design of the website, but I've reviewed it, and if it was not accurate, I would ask them to take it down. But it is an accurate depiction of all of the major organizations that have endorsed in the race, including the ones I didn't get.
Before he passed away, Dennis Richardson was the only Republican to hold statewide office in a very long time, which indicates that people may be willing to want to vote for somebody more middle of the road, maybe leaning right. Are you afraid you could be too far left for this job, considering that?
No, because when it comes to left or right, that doesn't matter in the Secretary of State's race. What mattered is moving us forward. And I'm the only person in this race who spent the past decade moving forward and championing expanding access to the ballot here in Oregon. And it matters right now. We have essentially two parties that have solidified around a stance on voting rights. The Republican Party, it wasn't this way when Tom McCall and Norma Paulus and Mark Hatfield were Republicans here in Oregon, but today we have a president willing to spend tens of millions of dollars in lawsuits to stop voting by mail in other states. We have voter suppression as part of the Republican platform in this country, so it matters that we elect a Democrat as Secretary of State. It matters that our Secretary of State belongs to a party that is looking to expand voting rights, not one looking to suppress the vote.
Gotcha. The whole issue of redistricting, what do you think the best plan forward is for that? Have an independent commission or do it the way it is now?
Well, the way that it is now is working for Oregonians. We would never want to get to a place where we see states like Wisconsin, where 2/3 of the legislative seats are held by Republicans, and yet they didn't win. They didn't win more than 50% of the votes in the last elections. But in Oregon, right now, the way we do redistricting is working for Oregonians. And the centerpiece of redistricting needs to be representation. Do more Oregonians see themselves and their families and their lived experience reflected in the government that makes decisions about their lives? And in 2016, Dan, the Oregon House welcomed the most diverse freshman class ever to serve in the Oregon legislature. And a number of those came from these so-called safe districts. But more importantly, people across this state felt represented because there were more people of color and more people who were LGBTQIA serving in the legislature, making decisions about the lives of people in Oregon. Representation, one person, one vote, that is the goal of redistricting, and Oregon seems to be doing that very well.
You have a lot of endorsements from unions, the pro-life folks. It's a long list.
Not pro-life, pro-choice.
Pro-choice, I should. Thanks for correcting me. Yes, pro-choice. But Mark Hass got the Oregonians endorsement. Can you reconcile the two?
Sure. I've won every election I've ever run in, and I've never actually gotten the Oregonians endorsement, except for the very first time because my opponent refused to show up for the interview. Look, the Oregonian editorial board, they get to make their own decisions, but every other time I've been endorsed by progressive newspapers. This time I have the widest array of endorsements. I have an endorsement from the Eugene Weekly, the Bend Bulletin, and the Portland Mercury. So the Oregonian, I respect the free press. I respect their right to express their opinion. I have no qualms with their ability to do so. But Oregonians ultimately make this choice, and I'm proud to be supported by the working people across this state who are cleaning hospital rooms, caring for patients, running into burning buildings, firefighters. I'm proud to have that. I would take their endorsement of the working people of this state over a newspaper editorial board any day of the week.
You got into this race kind of late. explain why you waited and the dynamic with Jennifer Williamson.
Well, I was supporting Jennifer. There's no question about that before she exited the race. I've always thought the Secretary of State would be an amazing opportunity to serve Oregon. Like I said, I've been working on access to the ballot issues for the past decade, since my very first service in the legislature in 2013. I was then sitting down with then Secretary of State Kate Brown as we mapped out the path to passing automatic voter registration, which we did 2 years later. Most recently, I'm the only person running who actually sponsored the ballot, the prepaid postage that Oregonians, their postage is prepaid on every ballot. I'm the only person running who sponsored that legislation. So I've been working on the issues that relate to the Secretary of State's office, expanding access to the ballot, as well as small businesses. The very first bill that I chief co-sponsored, Dan, as a freshman legislator, created the Office of Small Business Assistance in the Secretary of State's office. In my first term, I also sponsored the bill to create benefit corporations, a business entity that allows businesses in Oregon to actually care about social justice in their community, and not just the bottom line of lining their shareholders' pockets. And so I have been working on and championing policies to make Oregon more accessible for small businesses and for voting rights my entire legislative service. I'm the only person running with that track record, and that's why I'm proud to be endorsed by the most progressive, grassroots, racially and geographically diverse coalition in this race.